Hello and welcome to Word and Image again for a demo to help us out with our magazine projects and with setting text. We're going to learn about threading text, our stories, in an InDesign document. So first step will be to set up the document, but I just wanted to show you what this will look like. This is what I'm kind of looking for initially. And you should be able to see my screen, and you should be seeing that I'm looking at a two-page spread with text in place. This is going to be different because, of course, most of this first spread will be illustration, so I'll probably be getting rid of a lot of this text later on. But this is a good starting point to just see how much room your story is taking, the character of your story, because different texts have different kind of character. Some texts are mostly description, and they have long blocks of text. Others might have a lot of dialogue, so they're short, quick statements that are all different paragraphs, and that has a different quality or character to it. It looks a little more choppy, perhaps. And then there's a mixture between the two where there's a long descriptions, and then so each text has its own kind of quality and appearance, and that can affect how you set it. Anywho, let's start a new project, new page, document. Remember last week we talked about setting margins and the introduction to grids. So I'm going to do all of that with setting up my document here, and I'm going to try and be able to see what it looks like because I've got my little preview button placed. So it's the size, of course, is 8¼ wide page by 10 inches high. We are going to have 4 pages in this project. We are going to start our pages on page number 2 so that we can get rid of the cover pages. Once you put it on there, you have to, so now you'll notice that my pages are now spreads and they don't have that cover. And that's because I'm starting on an even numbered page number. And you can start that, of course, in this document. And this is my spread. I don't know if I should be using an apostrophe, but I am because I'm a rebel. And let's see, margins. This is what we talked about last week, and columns. I'm going to probably be designing a 2-column project. So I'll start off with 2 columns. I'll leave the column gutter alone, but you'll see that I'm creating a grid just by doing that. However, what I don't like is that it's a default margin. And last week I talked about not doing default margins and taking control of your margins. I'm not going to do that this week. So look at next week. Last week's demo will show you how you can change your margins. I would suggest you leave a little bit more room at the bottom because you have to fit the folios or the page numbers at the bottom typically, unless you're doing some avant-garde design and it needs to be on the outside, perhaps in the outside margin. But take a look at last week's if you haven't seen it. I think everything's here except, let's just get a little bleed, just in case I need a bleed, 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch rather. And boom, now I've got it. I've got all 4 pages. I've got a grid, although it's a default grid as far as the margin goes, and I find it kind of dull, but it's a great start. I can always go in and change my margins up in the layout, margins and columns. I can change columns and margins up there if I make a decision later on. All right. So we need some text frames to get this thing started. This is what a grid makes things a little bit simpler for you because you've done the math ahead of time, and you can use these guides to size your text frames. Here's 2 columns worth of text frames right now. I might be a little bit more careful. It looks like it's snapping to the guides, so it's working out. So I'm going to make 3 to start with, so I can show you how to add a third of the last one. But they're there. Can't really see them because they don't have outlines on them, but they are there. There we go. Great. Once we get that, we need the text. So for that, I'm going to, let's see, go down, find my, this is where you guys will drill down, find that Google Drive that I've shared in the questionnaire. And in there is a bunch of documents that you can copy, and you can open up one and make a copy for yourself, or just simply open it and then get in there and just select the text. Don't select the gobbledygook. And there is gobbledygook. There's titles, there's the author's byline, there's all that stuff. What you just want is the raw text. I'm using Desaliento for this. Notice that there's a little bit of stuff at the end that actually shows when it was published, the word count, and how many paragraphs are in it. That helps me track, and it can help you track to make sure that you haven't dropped a paragraph or lost text if you're using the info tools in InDesign to track things. I'm going to Command C that to copy it, and I'm going to hide this. And then I'm going to take my type tool, plop it in the first frame, and hit paste or edit paste or Command V. There we go. And it's got there, and you'll see that there is a little angry box here. I'm going to select this so that we can see what it's doing. And then I'm going to go out and grab this thing, copy, and I'm going to, whoops, wrong one. There we go. And I'm going to drop that in because it might be a little easier to see on your screens with this example of what I'm trying to show here. So when you select your text frame, you should know that should see that there, the little anchor points in the corners that show you where you can grab and stretch things or resize and what have you. Those are there. But also, if you haven't noticed already, there's these little boxes on the side here and here. Those guys, like this and this guy, are the import and the output of the text frame. And that's where text that is flowing from frame to frame or threading is technically coming in. It's a reference point for when you want to connect one text frame to another and flow type between the two. So that's the example. I'll get rid of that, it's in the way. So this means overset, this little angry plus sign that's red. If I take a selection tool, not the type tool, but the selection tool, and I click on that little box, it should change my cursor into this, which means I am now able to thread to another text frame, another empty text frame. The other frame should not have any text in it yet. So if I click on this text frame, it will now take some of the missing text. It's a lot of text, so it's not even fitting in 2 frames, and it flows it to the next frame. What's wonderful about this and critical when you're working with text is that if you have to make an edit, like I want to change my typeface, and it's going to change how wide my measure is because the letters are wider, or I want to track things out, I want to make a change of some kind. I want to change the size of my typeface, make it smaller or bigger. It's going to reflow the text. Well, if I have it threaded and I change something, like I want to put an illustration up here, and I make this shorter, it reflows the text back and forth between the two, and it continuously brings it around. That keeps things from getting messy when you are doing a long text. And let's keep going. I'm going to click on this corner one. I'm going to thread to the next one. I still got more to go, but right now I don't have another text frame. I wanted to show you another technique, which is you don't have to have a text frame set up. You can just click on there, get that cursor going, and then click in this grid. It actually understands that you've created guidelines, and it makes the frame for you. And it fits it in the grid. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but it is working today, and I like it. And this threading doesn't just stay on the page. It doesn't just stay on the spread. It can go from spread to spread to spread. So it can go through the entire document. So I'm going to click here and go to the next page, click in my grid. All right, so that time it didn't line it up quite perfectly with the grid. It's a little bit fussy sometimes, but I can adjust it. And I can keep going. Whoops, I can keep going. Yeah, see, it depends on where I'm. If I click closer to the corner here, I think, yes, that's the way it's going to work. Boom. Boom. All right. All right, so I've got my thread and it's still going. It's a long story. This is one of the longer stories, Desaliento, which is about, it's about some sort of a spring break thing going on down in Florida with folks, a fellow from Argentina, I believe. All right, so I've still got story. It's going to overset. I could place it here. All right, that's the end of the story. That's the actual end of the story. And I know that because my outport is now empty of anything. I'll notice that my import has a little triangle in it saying that there is story that's being threaded from somewhere else. However, if you want to be able to track where this stuff is going, you can actually go to View, go to Extras, and then go to Show Text Threads. And when you do that, it actually shows you the path that your threaded text is taking. As long as you have these boxes selected, it will show you where the threaded text is coming from and going from. That can help you from getting confused if you're moving things around. It'll also show you right now that this is a very smart technology, and it's smart enough to know that, let's say I wanted to put a graphic in the middle of my spread that was filling the center. If I start deleting my frames, it still remembers that it should be threading the text to the next in the chain. So it's very smart and it keeps things going. Now I have a nice pocket here for an illustration or some sort of graphic treatment. And if for some reason you wanted to add a frame, I can go backwards, and it can go backwards as well. By clicking on the output and going back, it has added another frame. So that's how you can thread your text frames. So thank you for watching, and I will continue in my next video with the paragraph panel and a little bit of formatting madness.